This week, 5 candidates traded barbs as foreign policy took center stage at a tense third Republican presidential debate. But while the presidential hopefuls sparred, former President Trump was missing again as the field struggles to find ways to chip into his dominating lead. Joining us now from South Carolina's former UN ambassador, former governor, and presidential candidate Nikki Haley, who has seen a healthy uptick in her recent polling. Welcome back, Ambassador.
Thanks so much, Shannon.
I want to start with Israel. Obviously, you have a deep foreign policy resume. What role do you think that the U.S. should have as an ally right now? You heard some of the comments from Senator Warner, chair of the Intel Committee. But there are critics with our own diplomatic corps who echo what he has said, that they're worried about us losing the Arab world, Israel losing the Arab world, with the current strategy and possibly the next generation that would be necessary for solving some of these problems long term.
Our solution should be this. I mean, we should have 3 priorities. 1, to help Israel eliminate Hamas. 2, support Israel with everything they need, no questions asked. And 3, to make sure we do everything we can to bring the hostages home. This is a tough situation, but this is not just an Israel issue. This is an American issue. 33 Americans were murdered. They have American hostages right now. Israel is the tip of the spear when it comes to terrorism, and we have to remember Iran is the #1 state sponsor of terrorism. And when they say death to Israel, they say death to America. This war affects us as well.
Well, you heard Senator Warner also saying that he thinks a number of you on the debate stage were ready to go to war with Iran or do exact strikes on their actual soil, something a lot of people think would lead to a much broader regional war, if not something worse like World War III. What do you say to those who, I saw the headlines this week. The Republicans seem very interested in going to war with Iran.
It's quite the contrary. A strong America doesn't start wars. A strong America prevents wars. What we're trying to do is prevent further war. And I dealt with Iran every day at the United Nations. What they do is they lie, they exaggerate, and every dollar they get goes to terrorism. The focus we need to have is right now you've had almost 100 strikes on our men and women in the military in Iraq and Syria. That's unforgivable. My husband's at one of those bases around the world. We don't ever want them in any harm whatsoever. But the thing is, you don't play the tit for tat with Iran. What you do instead is when they do this, you go right at the heart of their infrastructure. You hit their ability to go and even hurt an American soldier.
Physically.
If that doesn't work with Iran, yes, you take out their infrastructure. If that doesn't work, then you go after the leadership in the IRGC and make sure you go after the leadership in Iran. Remember, when we hit Soleimani, it flat-footed Iran. They respond to strength. Iran has always backed off when they realize America is serious. And so us having the backs of Israel is hugely important. Us having the back of Ukraine is important because you've got an unholy alliance of China, Russia, and Iran all trying to intimidate us and intimidate our friends. Don't fall for it. The one thing that all of them fear is when we have an alliance that's strong and that we stand by.
There are a lot of growing questions about whether the U.S. and its military specifically can be stretched in all of these different directions with all of these different potential conflicts. The New York Times raises questions. We continue to hear about weapons inventory, not only for ourselves, but our allies and those we're trying to help. They say this guided munitions and more complex American systems are being funneled to both the Israel and Ukraine conflicts, even as American partners in the Indo-Pacific wait for weapons deliveries of their own. The Center for Strategic and International Studies warns that we are so low on some munitions and missiles, it would take years for us to get back and replenish those. So what would it take for you as president to rebuild our weapons base, to get those deliveries to folks like Taiwan who are waiting on them, and more broadly to get us out of these foreign conflicts?
The #1 job of a president is to protect Americans. And keep in mind that any of the resources that are spent on Ukraine and Israel is typically we're giving them the older ammunition. We're giving them our older equipment. And so we're replenishing it with new. That's a good thing. But we also want to look and see what our stockpiles look like. Where are we low? What are we going to need going forward? And focus more on that. Keep in mind that the amount of money being spent on Israel and Ukraine is less than 5% of our defense budget. So this is about priorities. We need to, 1, secure the border. We need to make sure we have the backs of Ukraine, and we need to have the backs of Israel. But focus on who's supporting who. It is interesting that the Taiwanese, they want the West to help Ukraine. Why? Because they know if Ukraine wins, then China won't invade Taiwan, and we won't have to deal with that. There's a reason that, the Ukrainians want us supporting Israel. Why? Because they know if Iran wins, Russia wins, and they don't want to do that. Everybody else sees this unholy alliance except for Americans. Americans have their head in the sand. If we do this right in Ukraine and Israel, we won't have to deal with China. China's watching every bit of it, and they fear America that stands by her friends.
Well, Americans, the polling shows, are growing weary of all of these different incursions around the world that we're being drawn into, and they are looking, in many cases, according to the polling, to a commander-in-chief who would pull them out of many of those. And I know that that's just part of the argument about the 2024 field. I want to get to that because the New York Times had a piece about you. Actually had some nice things to say, which you might find surprising, but they had a long list of things they say have to happen if you're to win the nomination, the GOP nomination. We're going to scroll those on the screen. I'll just read a few of them. You need more money for TV ads. Donors have to give up on other candidates. Candidates have to drop out for New Hampshire. You have to flip people. It goes on and on and on. It's sort of in the vein of saying, so you're saying there's a chance. If all these things don't align for you, how long will you stay in and fight?
It's so ridiculous. We are surging in the polls. Not only are we surging in the polls, if you look in the swing states, it shows that we beat Biden by 10 to 13 points. We are now second place in Iowa, second place in New Hampshire, second place in South Carolina. There are no other candidates that are going to be getting in the race because now it's gotten too late. We have plenty of money that we're going to be on TV with, and you're going to see that we're going to be strong not just in Iowa. We're going to be strong in Iowa. We're going to be strong in New Hampshire. We're going to be strong in South Carolina because we spent our money well. We've got great ground games in every one of those states, and we're going to keep surging. You've got Trump that's flatlined. You've got DeSantis that's falling in the polls, and we continue to go up. And we've had a great, last debate. We raised $1 million in 24 hours past the debate, and we're going to go work hard to earn every Iowan, every Granite Stater, and every South Carolinian vote because we have a country to save.
Well, let's talk about a little bit of the realities, though. I mean, President Trump is up 30 to 40 points in most polls out there on the entire rest of the field. Governor DeSantis picked up Governor Reynolds' much coveted endorsement in Iowa, along with a number of other leaders there. He now has the highest favorables in the GOP field in Iowa, including President Trump. And then this headline from The Hill yesterday, it says Trump's massive lead in polls deals blow to the rivals' electability case. They talk about polls from New York Times, CNN, CBS News, Emerson, all showing President Trump leading President Biden in a head-to-head matchup. You do better in those polls, but how do you convince primary voters to abandon somebody who's up by 30, 40 points when this argument about him being able to beat President Biden is, in many of these polls, being muted?
Well, I think, first of all, I think certainly Trump has some strong support. I've always said he was the right president at the right time, and I agree with a lot of his policies. The problem is drama and chaos follow him, whether fairly or not. It is constantly following him, and Americans feel it. And so I think you can look at that with our elections over and over again. We pay the price for it. And I think what's really important is we need to have someone who can win the general election as well. We need to make sure that we have a new conservative leader. Republicans have lost the last 7 out of 8 popular votes for president. The way you do that is you send someone in there that doesn't just beat Biden by 2 or 3 points like Trump does. You get somebody that beats Biden between 9 and 13 points. That way we win up and down the ticket, governor's races, congressional seats, all of those seats. That's what we're trying to do, is not just win the presidential. We want to win across the board. I can do that, and that's the focus that we have. And I'll tell you that I think people are getting tired of the drama and the chaos and the negativity. They see the wars happening around that they want to prevent and put an end to. They see inflation that they can't afford. They see a border that's open. They see crime on the rise, and they see that our kids are suffering terribly in reading and math, and we've got to get that right. We are going to start to make America strong and proud again, and we're going to finish this, but we need everybody to go to NikkiHaley.com and join us.
All right, we will follow along. See you on the campaign trail. And Ambassador, always our thanks to your husband, Michael, who is in uniform with tens of thousands of other Americans around the globe. Thank you both for his service.
Thank you. God bless them all.
That's right.